All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be taking a look at basic geometric shapes. We're done with our algebra review. We're going to go ahead and get started into the real geometry side of things. We're going to be spending actually a couple days focusing on just defining the basic shapes and naming the basic shapes to make sure that we have that down, because it's something that we will use and I will expect you to use correctly all year. So first things first, a point. A point is a single location noted by a dot. When we talk about this, these dots have no length, no width, no depth. It is just a single specific spot. So technically, that dot that I just put there is way bigger than a point should be. So no dimensions. No. Okay. So this is the base shape. Everything is defined from points. That's why we're starting there. The second most common thing is a line. A line is an infinite set of points, or I'm sorry, a set of points that will extend in opposite directions infinitely. So this is a set of points that extend in opposite directions infinitely. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you an example here. Like above the point, we had a single dot, like that would be our point. What we're looking at here is we've essentially got an infinite set of points, dot, 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 dot. And I'm going to keep going and going and going and going and going. And to show that we're going and going and going, never ending, we put an arrow on the end. And then we're going to go the opposite direction. So you go away from each other, go away from each other. And in focusing there, I got kind of an ugly line. Usually they have a thinner and smoother feel to them. Okay. So that is a line, and it's defined that way because that forces it to be straight. Lines are always straight. There are no curves at all. Everything else that we're looking at, well, not everything else, the next few things are going to be parts of a line. They come from it. So a line segment, an array, and technically opposite rays are all parts of a line. So a line segment is a part of a line that consists of 2 points. We will call them the end points, and all points in between. So that would be something like this guy right here. So I don't put the arrows on, means it does not extend forever. It just kind of stops at those endpoints. And these guys right here are the endpoints. Okay? The other part of a line that we'll work with is called a ray. A ray is part of a line, again, that consists of a single endpoint and all points in one direction. So in that sense, we have a single endpoint and everything in one direction, like I have there. Opposite rays are two rays with, and I'm going to use some abbreviations here, with, W with a slash, the same endpoint, that extend in opposite directions. So when we look at opposite rays, if I were to draw a picture of opposite rays, in the end, it kind of looks like a line with the one dot in the middle. This would be opposite rays. They are not opposite rays just because they share endpoints. So like this right there, that's two rays that share an endpoint. This is not an opposite pair of rays. In fact, we have another name we'll talk about for those. It's called an angle. Hopefully you guys have seen it before. Okay. Our next one is going to be very difficult to draw a picture for. In fact, I'm not going to even be able to, because for the most part, planes are any flat surface, or any flat surface that extends infinitely in all directions. So like the top of your desk, or the wall, the ceiling, the floor, those kind of things, any flat surface. So and remember, infinitely, a flat surface that extends infinitely, this word meaning forever and ever, never ending, in all directions. And by stating that it's flat, that tells me that it's not going up or down or getting further and closer. There's no depth to it. Length and width, yes, like a rectangle or a square or a triangle. Those would all be shapes that I could draw on a single plane. The second that we get something coming off, like, I don't know, a human being, a dice, a pen, those are not planes. This last sheet of paper I can view as a plane. All right, these last two words are just kind of vocab words that help us save a little bit of time. Coplanar and collinear, they have a very similar name, very similar meaning. Coplanar and collinear. That co, like a co-pilot, it's with the pilot. Co meaning with or within. These are points on the same plane. Coplanar points are points on the same plane. Collinear are points on the same line. So there we go. Let's make that a little bit easier to see. Points. There we go. Okay, so those are the definitions. Now we're going to take a look at how to draw them, how to write them. So give me 1 second as I flip the page. And you'll see evidence that I had poor planning because I used a marker that kind of bleeds through, which means it's going to be a whole lot harder for you guys to read. So I'm going to have to do this on notebook paper. Apologies. So here we go. Here's my notebook paper to make up for my oops. So when it comes to naming these, this would be the next page on there. When it comes to naming shapes, there are very specific rules that we have to use here. So with naming shapes, a point is named by a single capital letter. Or uppercase. They have to be capital letters, and we also need to make sure that we include the word point in front of it. So if I had a point here, like so, that would be the point P. If I'm going to name it, I'm going to write the word point P. We do not actually name it by drawing it like that. That is the drawing of it, not the name of it. This is the name of it. Notice that I did not say with a lowercase p, not okay. I did not just put a capital P by itself. That is not okay. It has to have the word point, and it has to be a capital letter. The next one that we have is a line. A line is named by any 2 points on the line. So over here, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line. And I'm going to kind of prove my point and how I would name this, that line there. So you see I have point A, point B, point C, point D. All 4 of those points are on the line. I can use any 2 of those points to name it. So I could say AB, I could say BC, I could say CD. I could even change the order, maybe go with DB. Any of those. However, there's one thing we have to be very careful about. When I'm identifying that it is a line, I put a little bar on it over it with the arrows. So all of these are naming that line to the left. They are all the same line because it's all from all those points are on that line. They're collinear. We have to be very careful when drawing that bar over top and making sure it has those little arrows, because if it does not have those arrows, it means something different. If it only has one of those arrows, it means something different. So we have to be very careful, very precise in how we name these. All right. Speaking of what happens if we don't put the arrows on it, that would create a line segment. Now, when we name the line segment, these are a bit stricter. These are named using both endpoints. So in my example above, I wouldn't have all the freedom. Those would not all be the same segment if I had named them as a segment. So right here, I would call this segment AB or BA. And I label it by not putting on the arrows. That tells me that it ends. No arrow to say it's going to go on and on forever, but it does tell me that it is a shape by putting a little bar over top. That gives me a line segment. Next one would be an array. A ray is named using the endpoint and any other point on the ray. So I'm going to go back to my line setup that I had going here. So I'm going to have multiple choices. So A, B, C. There are actually 2 ways I could name this ray that would be okay. I could call it ray AB. I could call it ray AC. Notice that my arrow goes to the right both times. A is the endpoint. This guy right here should always be the endpoint, where we start. I know that sounds weird saying where we start is the endpoint, but it's kind of terminology you get used to. So ways that would be incorrect, I cannot name this backwards. This is not okay. Also, I would be saying that B is the endpoint in this situation. So when my arrow is going the wrong way, this is not okay. It has to be from left to right. I have to have the endpoint first, arrow from left to right. Okay? Also, if I were to say ray CA and ray AC, those are not the same ray because it tells you a direction. So I could do a ray CA if I had it going off to the left like I did here lightly in red. All right, so one last shape to talk about naming, and that is a plane. Planes have the most variety in how we can name them. So a plane is named using any 3 points on the plane, or a single letter that is not a point. Okay, so if I'm going to try to do a quick sketch here, freehanding it. I don't know if you caught on yet, but I'm struggling a bit. I have to hold my camera trying to do this when I'm at home. So when we do planes, we kind of do a leaning rectangle, and it's understood that the arrows kind of go in this kind of direction to try to give a 3D-ish look. It says it's going to go on and on and on. What I could do, I'm going to put some points on here. We'll call this L, M, P, Q. I'm also going to put a letter over here, Z, in the corner. Might be a bit hard to see. When it comes to naming these, I want to point out that these 4, L, M, P, and Q, all have points, dots right next to them. This Z that I did over here does not. So if I'm going to name this, I can do it in several ways. Now the first thing is I have to write the word plane. I could call it plane LMP. I could call it plane MPQ. Any 3 of these points in any order, it's going to be the same plane. QLM. Those, not all the ways I could name that plane, but they're acceptable ways to name the plane. And these are all points. Notice I'm only using 3. When I name with a single letter, I have to use one that is not a point. So there are no dots near that Z. I can call it plain Z because of that. If there was a dot there, I could not call it plain Z. I cannot call this plain M. In this situation, it's not okay. Plain M is not okay. Another thing that you might notice is I used only 3 letters. L, M, P, Q. I cannot name a plane with more than 3 points. That is an incorrect thing to do. Do not do it. 3 points, only 3 points. Or a single letter which is usually hanging out in the corner that does not have a point. I personally prefer the 3-point way, but sometimes you come across textbooks or resources online that do it with the 1 capital letter. All right.